Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Nothing But Locks podcast. I'm your host, Ali Melnicki, accompanied by my favorite coworker, Robert Kowalski. How are you doing this afternoon, Robert?
Glad to be back so soon, Ellie. I feel like I've kind of started to zero in on how I like the Final Four to look. So I sure am looking forward to this expeditious episode.
Well, of course, I said I wasn't going to make any changes. That obviously changed. I did make some changes to my bracket, but only in one region, I will say. And we'll get to that a little later. But the Midwest region, that was the one I was least confident on a few days ago. I made a few changes. We'll get to that in a little bit. But I wanted to have this episode so that when the listeners go back and say, hey, well, you liked Indiana. And I say, well, I did change my pick. So we have it on record. It's Wednesday, March 15th. I did make a few changes. But Robert, let's start with the odds and betting trends. So at Baldini's, what are you looking at? What is the what game has the most bets for a first round upset right now, both money line and against the spread?
Yeah, oddly enough, it's not the games that you would expect to see. It's of course I've got our regular wagers, which is of course the ever so popular parlaying of all the number one seeds on the money line. That's always going to happen. You're not going to get the best of value.
I was going to say, what is that still, like minus 2,000?
Yeah, the return is kind of infinitesimal, but just the money line. So I'm just happy to be offering a money line that I'm staring at one that's minus 5,000. So it doesn't matter what the point
when
spread is.
Virginia lost, I was in Vegas. I don't even think there was a money line for them that you could have bet that year.
Yeah, and then if you even looked at in game, even that got even pretty ridiculous here. It's very rare to see, Ali. You're absolutely right. But hey, in terms of what we're looking at today, as of our recording, the highest number of tickets that I have is on Iowa over Auburn, and these are money line bets. And then the other first round, I guess we could call it an upset, right? Because they're taking dogs on the money line, is Illinois over Arkansas.
Really?
Yeah. What do you think of those?
I mean, those are pretty safe. Those are 8-9 seed bets. Those are pretty much coin flips, I would think anyway. I'm kind of, just from reading other brackets and talking to people, I would have guessed. I feel like a lot of people are in Drake over Miami. That's one of the ones I would have guessed. I would have also guessed probably I'm hearing a lot of people like Oral Roberts over Duke. So that's an interesting one. I guess people are kind of still playing it safe, if that's fair to say.
Close friend of mine from back east, the only thing he texted me so far, and it's incredible. It's like I spoke to him on Saturday. He texts me on Sunday. He hasn't spoken to me since. He texts me on Sunday. He says, the only bet I'm making for the rest of this month is Oral Roberts on the money line over Duke. I'm like, okay.
Well, my dad will be happy to hear that.
And then, of course, if we just take a look, so that's of course just money line bets. And then if we look at some games with spreads, the most tickets that I have on spread bets is Penn State covering over Arkansas, not to win outright, but they all are grabbing that +3. One tiny +3.5. But yeah, they're backing Penn State over Texas A&M on +3 there.
Well, I love Penn State too, so that doesn't surprise me. What about to win the championship? Is Alabama getting all the money, or are there other teams getting more bets?
Okay, good. So this is tickets versus money.
Right.
It's almost 1 and 1A. The most tickets I have written is really no surprise, Alabama and UCLA.
Okay.
Now, the highest liability, it's another story. We are fearing Illinois, Xavier, K-State, those three. Now, yes, I know you're like, okay, wait, we haven't even mentioned them in any sense.
Illinois championship.
But yeah, no, there's some early tickets, way up in the three digits, 250, 300, 500 to 1. So I've got those schools circled. I sure wouldn't mind seeing them eliminated in their first game.
All right. Well, we'll see. I don't have Illinois winning one game in this tournament, so I agree with you. I think that I actually have Kansas State going pretty far. I can understand making a play with that, but yeah, I mean, Xavier, I feel like they always disappoint every year, but we'll see. All right, well, let's move to the bracket, Robert. So back to changes. I'll lay out my changes first, and then you let me know, if you've kind of flip flop on some bets or some picks that you had on Monday, and now it's Wednesday, and 48 hours does a lot. It might have changed your mind. So I mentioned the only changes I made were in the Midwest bracket. Originally, I had Indiana going pretty far. I had them going to the Elite Eight. And there's just something, the more I talked about it, the more I was trying to talk myself into saying that Indiana's going to be consistent and going to get there. And it's because I like Trace Jackson Davis so much. So I removed my bias. I really looked at their body of work, and I couldn't find a more inconsistent team than Indiana. And that never bodes well for this tournament. So I did a complete 180 on this one. And not only do I no longer have Indiana making the Elite Eight, I have them losing to Kent State in the first round. Tell me I'm crazy on that one.
Wise decision, Allie. It's one incredible student athlete can take a program very far. However, it's very unlikely that could happen. Look, Indiana did very, very well. However, I don't believe that they are due their number 4 seed. Not even close. I actually don't think they're due a 6 or even a 7 seed.
Right.
If we look at everything that they've done this year, sure, they're quite efficient. I just don't feel that they have really the necessary push through to match up with some of the other far more balanced schools. Much less, look, let's say they do make it far. They're gonna have to play Houston, right? And Houston's got every reason for them to win this championship. Forget about beating Indiana. Right? If okay, let me go ahead and make a quick number. I'd have to say Houston would be 5.5 over Indiana, right? And so that's just with just really quick, just parsing out of a point spread. So it'll be very difficult for them to advance, much less beat Houston, who's got everything ringing the correct direction for them, Allie. Good choice there. Nice.
Yeah. Then my other big choice, because then after I no longer have Indiana going all the way there, I have Miami and Kent State in the round of 32. Then I have Miami beating Kent State. I'm not falling into the Drake thing. I feel like too many people are taking Drake over Miami, and I don't go with the popular pick. I just don't. All right. So then the other change I have is the playing game that we saw last night against Pittsburgh and Mississippi State. I watched that game, Robert, and I said, man, I don't know if it's nerves or what between these two teams, but they don't look like two teams that belong in the NCAA tournament. They belong in the NIT tournament. But I will say, I will lay it out. I do think that the playing game does have an advantage because I think that they get the butterflies out of their stomach. I think they tweak anything that was wrong, and I actually think they come out and play better. So I still have Pittsburgh beating Iowa State in the first round. But in the second round, instead of having Pittsburgh beat Xavier, I switched it. And I think Xavier is going to be just too much for Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh can get hot. Iowa State's been inconsistent all year. So I'm still going to go with that upset in the first round. But I'm going to take Xavier to beat Pittsburgh in the round of 32. What do you think about that?
Again, strong pivot. Yeah. I love Xavier. Matter of fact, I think they're seated right. Right. Their offense is absolutely spectacular. Now, look, Pitt's done great this year, and I love their trajectory. They definitely are peaking at the right time, but Xavier far much the best there with their Big East record. And I just honestly think that they'll probably end up, if Xavier and Pitt match up, I think Xavier's got to be 6 at least.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Well, those are my two big changes. Otherwise, everything else, all the other regions, I kept flawless. I didn't change anything. I feel good about them all. I really didn't. Again, my changes weren't made based on really what I read and what I saw. It's just gut feelings I have. I did the eye test with Pittsburgh last night. I really just didn't have a good feel about Indiana after we talked on our podcast the other day. Even when I was doing another podcast yesterday, I had already moved Indiana to losing to Miami in the round of 32, and then I just switched it to Kent State beats them in the first round. So let's turn it over to you, Robert. What has changed in your mind from Monday to today?
Nice. Okay, so not much. I still really love the direction and the trajectory of UConn. I still really, I really feel strong about Tennessee. However, I'm going to go and just bring it all the way to the Final Four. So I didn't talk enough about just how stacked the Crimson Tide is this year.
Yeah.
They are a legit 8, maybe even 9 deep, alley. So even if, let's say you corral Brandon Miller, you get him into foul trouble, he's got to sit for an extended period of time. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Like, you could just line up the next player in line. Noah Clowney is just really, really fantastic at the other side of the court. Between Sears and Quinterly and then Jaden Bradley, they're all really, really great players that have excellent range. Rylan Griffin, excellent range, right? So these players can definitely fill in gaps when necessary, and not to mention their defense. God, they're so good defensively. So, Allie, I am going to change my champion from UConn to Alabama.
All right. Well, one of us should get it because I have UConn beating Alabama. If this is the final, Robert, we'll put a nice bottle of Jack Daniels as a wager between the two of us.
Neat. Yes. Love it. Yes. For me, it's Alabama only because the defense it's honestly one of the best out there, really outside of UCLA. I can't really find any of the top tier selections to win this year's college basketball championship out there as a better defensive core. And again, if we look at some of the other things like the tempo, Alabama's tempo is unlike anyone in the top 25. They move the ball so well. And again, that's something that schools really have to prepare for. If you haven't seen something like Houston could probably catch up and run with it. UCLA could probably catch up and run with it. Tennessee can do the same. Connecticut, if it's Connecticut against Alabama, I feel that UConn's going to have a bit of a problem shutting off the water off of that fire hydrant, alley.
We would have thought at the beginning of the year the national champion wouldn't be Alabama in football, it'd be them in basketball, if that is.
How about that?
Any other changes, Robert?
No. I will stand very firmly against Gonzaga. That's not going to change. We could go ahead and insert.
Did I tell you my dad still picked them to go to the finals? I said, Dad, you pick them every year. He's like, well, this is the year no one's picking them, so they're going to go to the finals. I said, you need to just not talk to me.
But brilliant, just brilliant. No, I look, they've got an incredible program with just an amazing offense. They just don't have the defense to match it, and that's where I think they're gonna find themselves failing. That they're just going to find that one game somewhere along this path, and that offense is just not going to be there, Ellie, and that's what's going to be their downfall again. And honestly, St. Mary's not too far behind them as well. So if you like Gonzaga, you probably should like St. Mary's as well. But the WCC, it's not going to be this year. Not for that conference. Not this year. I do really like the only other one that I probably thought of that I probably should mention just a little bit more for those filling out brackets is Texas. And yes, there is going to be obviously the path that they're going to have to run themselves through isn't going to be the easiest, right? Because ultimately, they're going to have to face off against Houston, and then if that Houston, hey, that's an all Texas Final Four, which is actually pretty cool if it does happen that way. But if I'm making a line of Houston against Texas, I got to tell you, it's going to be a lot closer than some people would think. I'd probably make it Houston 2 and not
That's
much.
what I was about to guess. I'd say Houston -2.
Yeah. That's about it. And the strength of schedule and then conference probably plays a little bit into that. But Allie, this one's going to be a lot better. I love the wide open tournaments, not ones where you just say, oh, wow, Kansas is so stacked, or Kentucky is so stacked, from a couple of years back. This is going to be a fun one because I'm really happy to see some of the seeds that are a lot higher are, for me, or maybe I should just change my verbiage. The teams that I have ranked significantly higher in my personal power rank
are seated significantly higher. That's what I wanted to say. And that's good.
Yeah.
I like when I see that. I feel again that we're talking about misseating, but that's something that I love to enjoy and break down. That's for sure.
So we shared our changes and everything. Everyone knows you have Alabama winning it all, have UConn winning it all. Let's get to some tips of people that they're still kind of struggling to fill the brackets out, or maybe they're a little new with it. I know a lot of people, Robert, that don't fill their brackets out until the night before. They want to do a clean bracket. They don't want to go with their racing. I mean, if you still write on it with pencil, but then it just gets too confusing. So give me your top 3 tips for filling out your bracket, and then I'll give you mine.
Okay, so number one, go and find a source that you can go ahead and say, I'm confident in this data set, and I really like breaking it down by one of 2 categories. Maybe you want to have a bracket A, which is offense, and then a bracket B, which is defense. So I'll go ahead and save you, and I'll actually go ahead and open up my book right now, and I'll share with you who are my top 3 schools ranked by their defense. Right. So in reverse order, number 3 is Alabama. Number 2 is Tennessee. And the top defensive school in the nation, in my eyes, is UCLA. So maybe you wanted to go ahead and just circle them and just bring them all the way on into the Final Four. That's cool. Maybe you wanted to do it from an offensive perspective, and it's going to look significantly more different. My top 3 offensive schools, again, in reverse order, might surprise you, because when we break it down, number 3 is Iowa. So that's
don't even start with me, Robert.
Just saying, Iowa, number 3 offense in the land. Number 2, Baylor, and then number 1, Gonzaga. So it sure would look significantly more different than most pools that you enter. And then finally, one that maybe just gives you a little bit of an edge very early in the pool. And for the better part, me and my colleagues have kind of set the spreads of the first round kind of in line with the seeding. However, you might find some games that go against the seeding of some of the schools. So my final tip is to take a look at the point spreads that us bookies set for the first round on Thursday and Friday games, and fill out your first round selections based off of the point spreads or the money lines, right? So whoever's the favorite in our eyes should be the ones that advance into round number 2. So that's my top 3 ways of filling out a bracket, should I ever do one.
Yeah, so I will be I do the same things every year. I always have at least one. Well, it's me. I like my underdog. So I always have multiple, but I tell people to pick at least one double-digit seed to get to the Sweet 16. So in, I believe, 35 out of the last 37 years, at least a 10, 11, or a 12 seed has made it to the Sweet 16. So those people that like Drake, or if you're like me that likes Charleston, there's people that like VCU, don't shy away from putting a double-digit seed into your Sweet 16. Not saying you got to put them in your Elite 8 or your Final Four for that matter. You know, you're only going to get your VCUs, your Loyola Chicagos every now and then. But I think to have at least 1 or 2, if you want to be a little risky like me, have a double-digit seed, get into the Sweet 16. I always think that is a good way to go. Another thing is, always, this is my favorite one, there's always going to be a 12 that upsets a 5. I don't even remember the last year that there wasn't. There usually is only, maybe, I think since 85, there's only been a handful of years where at least one 12 seed didn't knock off for 5. So I'm looking at you, those Drake backers, or if you're like me that like Charleston, hey, maybe you're like Robert's friend that loves Oral Roberts. Take a 12 seed, that they will probably upset a 5. It might seem like a big difference, a 5 seed from a 12 seed, but it really isn't when you look in terms of these talent levels. So always take a 12 over a number 5. And I guess one of the biggest ones is location. These teams aren't just playing each other in the middle of nowhere. There's designated spots, whether it's in Sacramento, California, whether it's in Houston, Texas, whether it's in Nashville, Tennessee. look where these games are being played, because recency bias could have an effect on a home court. If you have a team that's from, say, Texas playing in Houston against a team that's from New York, chances are it's going to be pretty much a home game for that Texas team. I always emphasize that home court advantage plays a lot when it comes into college basketball, college football, any college sport. These are still young kids. They still get behind a crowd that supports them. So take a look at location, and you also have to factor in travel. Are these, what if you have to travel from the West Coast all the way to the East Coast? That's a 3-hour difference. And if you look, they're 3 hours ahead. That could be a 6-hour difference if you really think about it, depending how late you travel. So location, location, location. What do you think about those, Robert?
I love what you did there with recency bias, not recency.
Yeah, not recency, recency.
Very, very well done. And if again to hark on what you said about a double digit, my highest power ranked double digit seeded school this year happens to be Utah State from the Mountain West. I have them ranked 18th in the nation. So if you're looking for that little tidbit, go ahead, and I'll definitely jump on board. And I do think the double digits somewhere, somehow will definitely make an impact. And for me, the highest one there happens to be Utah State.
I love Utah State in the first round. I wish they weren't the 10 seed. I can't bring myself to pick them over Arizona. But I think that game is going to be a lot closer, Utah State and Arizona, if Utah State upsets Missouri. Well, technically, it's not an upset. Utah State is favored by 1 in that game. So I think if Utah advances to the second round, they are someone to keep an eye on. All right, well, that's our quick rapid fire show of the day. Robert, I am so excited for the tip-off tomorrow. I can't wait. It's the weekend I look forward to every year. I know it's been about 3 years since I've been in Vegas for it. I used to go every year. The year of COVID was my first year not going. Since then, I got a daughter, so it's another reason why I am not going. But I hope to be there, if not next year, the year after. And I will just say, Robert, being in Vegas for March Madness is the most exciting time I think you can be in Vegas. Would you agree for that?
Absolutely nothing like it. I mean, literally nothing. Better than New Year's Eve, better than the Super Bowl. It's literally the first 4 days starting tomorrow. Absolutely nothing like it that I've ever experienced.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm sure, Robert, you will be super busy at Baldini's. A lot of bets to be made, not just even with the NCAA tournament, the NIT tournament a lot. Don't forget, there's some good bets to be made on there. And maybe some of those teams like Rutgers, Clemson, that didn't make the NCAA tournament, they have a lot to play for. So keep an eye on that. All right, Robert, before we sign off, any last words on this March Madness Eve for the listeners?
Yes. Okay. And my phone just hasn't stopped buzzing this whole time because they knew we were about to go and record our pod. Yes, all of you East Coasters. Yes, all my friends. I know. Yes, I know Aaron Rodgers. I know New York.
I was waiting for that.
I promise we will cover it. Not today. Okay. It's just pump the brakes. We'll get to it. Give us a few more weeks. Let us enjoy this beautiful time, and we'll get right back, because I know we've got a lot to talk about in the NFL between free agency moves, quarterbacks changing addresses, Darren Waller as a New York Giant. Oh,
yes,
I swear, I promise.
That.
Jesus, all of you, pump the brakes. Give me a break over here.
I will say, as a New York Giants fan, everyone knows this, I was thrilled for the Darren Waller trade. I know his injury history the past few years. I know people are saying, well, don't forget about Kenny Golladay. I am not comparing apples to oranges. Those are two different positions. This is a trade. This isn't a free agency signing. We essentially gave up Kadarius Toney for Darren Waller. I love the deal. Robert, real quick, what do you grade the deal?
It's for the New York Giants to give up just a third rounder. This has to be at the absolute low end, a B. At the high end, I could see him picking up. I literally could see him getting 90 to 100 receptions this year. So if that happens, it's clearly an A+.
I agree. And it's a Kansas City Chiefs pick. Let's not forget. So that's essentially almost a 4th round pick. So I couldn't be happier for the deal. Congrats to the Giants. We got a nice tight end. I don't think we've had a tight end of that caliber since the Jeremy Shockey days. All right, Robert, thanks so much for joining me, and we'll be back on Monday. Hopefully our brackets will still be intact. Either way, Robert and I will be here to recap what I know is just going to be a maddening weekend. Take care, everyone.